This is Things You Might Have Heard, where we'll present for you in just a moment yesterday's latest in information, politics, current events, and pop culture news. This is your go-to supplemental source for both mainstream and some unconventional news, that stories that you may have missed out there, with a little bit of context to attempt to keep things conversational with people from around the world, some folks you may not really get a chance to debate with. I am Jay Clifton Payne. The teaser graphic shows we're going to the story, we're keeping it in the news, of Carlee Russell. This time, this one today is blowing up as this turns into a really big sort of outstanding true crime sort of thing. But we'll have seven other stories you deemed as important as well. We're going to explain to how we do all that at the end of the headline presentation, so stay tuned for that. 8 stories total to get to right now. Let's go ahead and get into those stories. I remind you, you can go to our main website, which is Things You Might Have Heard, or for Things You Might Have Heard, and all the things you produce at the Conversation Project at thisisaconversationproject.com. We'll do more promotion of that in a bit, and fun stuff to come, so make sure you stick around for the fun stuff. That's always really great. Today is Tuesday, July the 18th, and we're going to present for you the 8 news stories that were cleared by you, and then of course curated by me here for the show. First story, we're gonna go to it front because it was by leaps and bounds the one that everybody was chatting about, everyone was engaging with by way too much. This will probably be the top story of the week, but for this link it's alone, the fact that we're doing 3 or 4 of her stories as it's updated. Boyfriend of Alabama woman Carlee Russell suggests she was kidnapped for her safe return. Still don't know the details of what happened. The short version of what we have is a lady was returning home from work. She gassed up at a gas station, and on the highway she saw a toddler walking by. So she called 911 and alerted that, then called a family member to say, hey, there's a weird thing going on. Then, just like in any other movie, you hear screams and the phone go down and you hear the sounds of cars driving away. A few days later, she's returned home. She was in a hospital and returning home yesterday, I believe, officially. And what we're getting from boyfriend, his name is Thomas Latrell Simmons, is that the whole story is a kidnapping. We shall go deeper into detail with this one as we move more details. Go ahead and read the story now and see what we know what happened, at least what's being said has happened now. We're going to give it a few days and let the story marinate, be honest, be a little nosy in it, and let's see how the things go back and forth and see what came about. The story is just so out there odd that it's one thing that, you know, it might as well be true because so many things just don't make any sense, but it's the making sense part that we really want to get into. So we're putting a lot of headlines, a lot of ink, if you will, pixels into this one. We also know the story is not quite over. Next story that isn't quite over. Georgia Supreme Court rules against Trump's efforts to block election probe into grand jury. Georgia Supreme Court unanimously, by the way, ruled that former President Donald Trump's lawyers had not been able to prove a reason to squash the grand jury's investigation into whether he and his allies should be criminally charged for allegedly illegally meddling in 2020 elections. That means they can't stop the investigation. That doesn't mean he won't be indicted. That does not mean that they won't stop the actual rulings to actually take him to trial. That just means the investigation is ongoing, and Georgia's Supreme Court and Georgia's Attorney General can keep on working on what's going to seem like the 3rd of 4 indictments he's going to get this year. Maybe 5 if Eugene Carroll gets a double indictment. We'll see how that goes on. We will see how this plays out going forward. Go deeper in this story because this one has real actual consequences, whether you're on the right or left side of politics, and just in general, just a real legal nerd, not just people following the celebrity stuff. It's celebrity, it's a president, it's also president for the actual running of our country. Our next story is, surprise, Ed Sheeran brings out Eminem to perform Lose Yourself and Stand in Detroit. Oddly enough, Eminem and collaborations will come back up again, maybe to haunt us near the end of today's program. But the deal with this one is Ed Sheeran had a concert in Detroit, and he asked Eminem to come play some cover songs because it's his hometown. And Eminem was game for it. Came out, did a version of Stand, with Ed Sheeran playing the Elton John / Dido role, and did some Lose Yourself. You know, love that song from his almost self-declaimed movie. Now I can't even think of it. 8 Mile. So he got up there, had some fun, and then did whatever. One of the weird things about musicians is they all kind of love each other, unless they hate each other. All musicians, all genres, they just like doing good music and like doing cool collaborations. This one would probably be a cool thing to see. You can probably see plenty of little videos. There were some clips if you go to some of the news stories, headlines of people with their phones recording Stand and Lose Yourself done by Eminem plus Ed Sheeran. So check it out. Fun thing happening over the weekend. Now, fun thing that did not happen yesterday, or not so fun thing, I should say to be exact. What happened was a Russian bridge was bombed by Ukrainians, suspectedly a pipeline for supplies for Russia. And what did Russia do? They closed down the pipelines for supplies for the world. They essentially pulled out of the grain deal that allowed Ukraine to export grain and some of their materials out of the Black Sea. This is doubly important because the Black Sea, the port that they go through, is controlled by Russians who are currently at war with Ukrainians. And one of the things you really usually try to do in war times is to cut off all supplies and all lifelines of any sort of materials. Ukraine sells a lot of grain to third world countries, a lot of grain to African nations and smaller nations in South America. So getting grain out and of course not having it spoil on the battlefields, which would be battlefields, is a good thing. And Russia was okay with that for a while trying to take over the country, oddly enough. Now, more or less because of the bridge, but they're saying not because of the bridge. They're just saying they're not getting anything out of it because no one's buying their grain. They're buying all Ukrainian grain. They're cutting off that pipeline to the world. We'll see. The last tanker that left the Black Sea was basically Saturday, Sunday. So at this point in time, it's 2-3 days in when there's no exports of any sort of materials out of Ukraine. We'll see how long that becomes an issue for the Ukrainians, for the Russians, and yes, the world. Our next story this morning, headline reads, Charles Barkley takes aim at rednecks and a-holes in explicit Bud Light speech at bar. Now, Charles Barkley was playing at the American Century Championship over the last weekend. A lot of great champions, a lot of great celebrities getting a chance to be celebrities and play golf, something that people do and celebrities do and have some fun with it. Now, Charles Barkley's game was pretty horrible. You've probably seen it just portrayed very badly in the shows about them trying to teach him how to play golf. But his game, as in spitting bars, was pretty much on fire. He's went on a pretty deep expletive-laden rant against the people backing off Bud Light, essentially saying, you know, gay people are fine, trans people are fine, people who hate gay people and trans people and aren't drinking beer because it F them. That's essentially how it came down. Oh, trust me, you can find it online. Go look for it. It's epic. It's epic content itself, and we're still waiting for him to go back to Alabama and run for governor, then maybe president. Because once he goes back to Alabama to run for governor, hell, we're all going back to Alabama. Let's move on to the next story. And as I said, we'd get back to collaborations more or less with Eminem. Elton John did a bit of a collaboration with the judges testifying at Kevin Spacey's sexual assault trial. Elton John and David Furnish, his partner, gave evidence of Kevin Spacey's sexual assault trial in London yesterday, and John saying that he didn't remember Spacey staying at his home after one event and that he wouldn't have noticed him, you know, outside a theater where he was performing. Essentially pleading in it just kind of ignorance in itself. It's a whole lot of crazy with this thing. In fact, Kevin Spacey actually pled guilty, but he's still on trial. I don't understand how the British thing works. Maybe it's something in the wigs. It just doesn't make sense. But Elton John had a chance to have a celebrity appearance at Kevin Spacey's sexual assault trial going on concurrently right now in London. Business news that affects my pocketbook because I am an owner of Activision Blizzard stock, waiting for it to be sold off and traded into Microsoft stock so I can get some cash. Call of Duty will remain on PlayStation following Activision Blizzard Microsoft merger. The merger has been essentially approved. Basically, everybody who complained about it has taken their lumps and going home. It's going to go down fairly soon at this point. But the biggest thing is how about collaboration for other different platforms. Call of Duty, a very popular game on the PlayStation, is going to stay on a PlayStation. So Activision Blizzard, Microsoft, whatever, are going to continue to make that game. It's going to still be wild, and it will still be available on other platforms other than just the Microsoft Xbox platform. We all know that's good for business, and it's good for the world, even though it is a game about, you know, continuing wars. That's a whole nother topic for another podcast. But we're glad that we got this going on. And like I said, I am an owner of Activision stock, and as soon as that thing bad boy flips over, I'm getting paid. Thank you very much. And this is a story that I didn't think was going to make it because when I posted it early into the feed, other stories sort of kind of got in the way. We could have pushed it back and pushed it back and pushed it back. It made it into our podcast, or into our feeds late in the culling, we cull from midnight on one day to about 4 a.m. the next day. So it gets up about 28, 29 hours worth of stuff. And it made it into the top 15 stories. We'll explain that literally after we do this story, how this thing works. And it's in there. It's an interesting story. You want to go through and read it and check out on it. The headline reads, 5 burros, and I always have trouble with the word burros, found fatally shot in California's Death Valley National Park, officials say. The park officials are asking visitors for tips after finding 5 animals in the lower Wild Rose area that last week. The dead animals are endangered native wildlife and that ingested toxic lead shots. As it said, 5 burros were found shot and killed in Death Valley National Park in California. That animals were not part of the removal efforts, park officials said. So no one was trying to scurry them off because of issues with getting people in different places of the park. Someone just shot 5 burros in the park, and they're looking for information on that. I think I got 2 stories mixed up in there, which is why the words got in there. So we'll go and admonish the robot editor in a bit on that one. But essentially, this was one because we've heard so many stories about people behaving badly with animals in Yellowstone. Animals being euthanized because people are playing with babies, things like that. Just, rule number 1, leave the wild animals alone. Rule number 2, leave the wild animals alone. And rule number 3, if you can't understand the rule number 1 and number 2, go sit at home because you don't understand to leave the wild animals alone. So let's go ahead and explain the explaining part of all that stuff. We're going to go to our teaser story for the day. And how we get a teaser story is extremely simple. We go to Facebook and Twitter, or you technically go to Facebook and Twitter and go to those sites we have there. Our feeds, our pages on Facebook and Twitter are thisisaconversationproject.com for Facebook and th_conversation for Twitter. Every 50 minutes or so, we're posting new headlines, new news stories, new things for you to engage in. And we ask you to engage in them. Number 1, read the story so you keep up what's going on throughout the day. Number 2, so we know what to talk about every single morning in the wrap-up version, if you will. Engage in the story so we know which stories you love or you hate or you don't love or you don't hate. So based on the platform, of course, give it a heart on Twitter, share it on Twitter. If you're on Facebook, like, love, hate, share, do what you want to do. The higher the engagement of a story gets, the higher chance you get to talk about it. Tuesday through Friday, we'll go to the top 15 stories of the day, and we'll pick 8 of those. Monday, we pick 10 of the top 30, and we present them here to you like we just did literally, 45 seconds ago. The story we could talk about today: tickets for Messi's US debut cost as much as $110,000. Lionel Messi is playing for Miami in the Major League Soccer of our states, and it's Major League Soccer to us, but it's minor league soccer to most of the world. But when we bring in big guys or big bucks, it does that. This is how we got Pele to play for the Cosmos back days. Paid him a bunch of money, and while he may have been more or less on his decline, he was still good enough to bring people in, good enough to play very well, and bring soccer a big old boost to the United States. Same thing going now, as Major League Soccer is actually getting a boon. American soccer for the men is actually getting much better, and so they're bringing in competition, some for show, some for go. Messi's bringing in folks for a bit of both. They're going to pay him big dollars, and of course, people want to see it. They're going to pay big dollars to see that. Do you want to see that? Do you want to talk about that? Go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter and let me know what we're talking about tomorrow. It could be one of these stories. If this story makes it in the top 15, we will definitely pull it for the 8 that we'll present for you in our headlines. But now we'll talk about our sponsor pick for the day. And this is one that we roll out a lot because we love chess in our household. The Chess Store is your place to get the best chess sets out there, best chess accessories, all things you need for chess. Now, this basically popped up because the Chess Store actually did some upgrades to their promotional stuff, to their creative. And so as I was sifting through the stuff, put in some new banner ads, put in some new links, updated some stuff, and decided, yes, this Tuesday is a day to do the Chess Store. We want you to get out there, and if you like fast stuff and quick engagement like we give you for this stuff here, you're not going to get that with chess. Hopefully not, because if you're playing a quick game of chess, then you're much like me and not very good. But chess is something that you can use to find stress release and just sort of get through your day if you have a big trouble all the while. And of course, chess brings enemies together as they play in a common war field, of common battleground, but play for the love of the game. You can get a beautiful chess set for yourself, for friends and family, for your home, and for travel by going to the chess store. Visit our affiliate link at thisistheconversationproject.com/thechessstore. This is theconversationproject.com/thechessstore. This is an affiliate link, so we get a commission from your sale of here. It costs you nothing extra, and trust me, you're going to pay every single penny you see because they're not going to cheat you on that, and they're going to give you great, beautiful sets from the chess store. Quick chance to promote ourselves. We are the Conversation Project, and this is where we live. This is theconversationproject.com. What we provide for you right now is our weekday newscast called Things You Might Have Heard. I'm doing it live at the moment as I'm speaking these words, but you may be listening on a recorded video or recorded podcast that's, trimmed up after the fact. We also have weekend shows to wrap up things going there, and a newsletter to get you to you really fast, 6:50 in the morning, every single 6:50 Central Time, I should say, every morning. So weekday morning, so you can get that as well. When we get on our stick, we'll give you the weekend stuff on podcast newsletters as well. A little bit of craziness going on right here. We can use some help. Your help can come by the way of visiting our sponsors and seeing them. They will get you the things you want, and we get a small commission from that. We also look for help in our partnerships commissions, our partnership pages. Go to thisistheconversationproject.com/partnerships and see if there's a way that we can partner up to get more stuff done. That's it, simple. If you think we're doing good things and great value with the product, help us get more product out to folks. I know that sounds like, I'm asking for drug mules, but what I'm technically asking you for mules to get out information, which can be a drug, to people who are brainy. So yeah, I guess you see that connection there. So today gave you the news, we did some sales, we did some promotion. It is time to have not a little, but a whole lot of fun. So let's go ahead and do that with the fun stuff. Starting off with our birthdays for July the 18th. Starting off with Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel turning 56 years old on a day. And I know I say I don't do impressions, I don't do voices, but hell, it's Vin Diesel, and you've got to do Vin Diesel because he's Vin Diesel. He's actually easy to do. Just can do that gravelly voice and say things that don't make any sense, and you're Vin Diesel. There you go. Or just say I am Groot over and over again, and you get a lot of words in by saying I am Groot in a gravelly voice. Kristen Bell, 43 years old on the day, the name we actually used for this because it was popular and it was shorter than Priyanka Chopra Jonas. We'll get to her in a moment. Kristen Bell, the lovely Kristen Bell, turning 43 years old on the day. Not doing very much in the way of anything major right now. Of course, no one's doing very much with the writer's strike and the actor strike right now. But she's always lovely when she pops up in things. And I think my wife is rewatching the show about them going to the good place for the 14th time this year because she seems to love it. Priyanka Chopra Jonas, not related to that other Chopra, 41 years old on the day. Vine actress, doing a couple things here. She's in one of the TV FBI, CIA switch dramas, and of course, she's married to that dude who has those brothers that do whatever, but that's beside the point. She's phenomenal on her own right. She is 41 years old on the day. Today in history, looking back at the 18th of July, going way back to 1969. Hey, after a party at Chappaquiddick Island, Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts drove his car off a wooden bridge into a tide-swept pool with his passenger, Mary Jo Kopeen. I always messed that up. I think Kopachny, I believe it's actually said, and she died. So beside me butchering that pretty big stack on history, Ted Kennedy essentially ruined his political career with that on action. Yes, being around when someone killed is always bad, but essentially this has been this was a cloud over his entire life. He still stayed senator for quite some time. People still seem to want to vote for him and want him to be in charge of stuff, but his attempts to go further, like his brothers did, basically tried to stay away from the pun, were just eliminated at that moment with that moment there. And of course, a lot of people have a lot of hate for the senator for the death of Miss Kopachny, which I apologize for butchering the name. So butchering more names coming up. In 1976 in Montreal, 14-year-old Romania gymnast Nadia collected her the first perfect 10 ever recorded in Olympic Games. At the 76th Games, she would get 6 more perfect scores, 3 gold medals, and a silver and a bronze. Watching her story was pretty amazing. In the 80s, they came out with, I guess it was a TV movie about her coming out of Romania and communism and things like that and getting the gold medals. And then, of course, later on, she would defect to America, marry another American skater, and essentially do the ice capades for a bunch of times. But this is the day way, way, way back in 76. Don't quite remember because I was only like 2, but when she won all that stuff and got that perfect 10 that day. Remember this one. In 2013, Detroit filed for bankruptcy to become the largest U.S. municipal bankruptcy at $18.5 billion. 10 years later, they're writing stories about the change. Detroit has gotten better. How much better? Maybe not quite 18.5 billion better. Your mileage may vary, but Detroit has definitely gotten out of the clear from its bankruptcy and is doing much better at the time. And you can kind of see the fruits of the labors right now. Today we're going to celebrate Sour Candy Day, and we're going back to something not sweet, although sweet, because it was one of the better things to pick out for the day. So sour candy is something that the kiddo loves to eat, especially sour gummy worms, because she just thinks they're the bomb. Get yourself some sour candy, suck on it, do faces like this. If you're watching the video, that made no sense, but do faces like this. I'm sorry if you're listening to the audio, this makes no sense, but do faces like this as you eat sour candy and smack your lips like that. Sorry for the smacking, folks. If you're watching, if you're listening to audio, none of that made any sense. Now, finally, one more thing you might not have heard. Do you know what nodding your head means? When you nod, you influence your attitudes about important issues. When you nod your head in affirmation or shake it in disapproval, that action sends a message to others and influences how you feel and think about the subject at hand. What's important about these findings is that the body movement can influence even when you're unaware it's happening. The next time you're on a fence about something, such as going for a run or walk or starting a project you've been putting off, ask yourself a lot if you should do that while nodding your head. Essentially, the act of nodding gives you positive feelings about things as you do stuff, and shaking your head gives you negative feelings. Whether you have those feelings or not, whether you're neutral or not, when you convey that to someone else as sort of the message, you're also reaffirming it in your head that you believed it to be on a positive or negative. I'm going to try that head nodding thing. We'll see how that works out. But what I'm going to do right now is just give it up for the day. Today has been, well, still is as I'm saying these words, but will be tomorrow, Tuesday? Well, today it's Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. Apologies for the stumbling and bumbling. Sometimes there's those sort of days, but thank you so much for being with us for the show. We don't do a show without you because you literally tell us what to talk about. It's impossible to do the things to talk about based off engagement if you're not engaging. So we ask you to engage. Go to our sites on Facebook and Twitter, our feeds, our pages, and engage with us. And you tell us what stories to talk about. If you think we're doing great stuff, go to our partnerships page and tell us how we can help do things better. The big important thing you need to do is, well, there's actually 4 things. 1 is share the feeds with others. 2 is share the videos and the product with others. 3 is stay hydrated, stay limber, stay on task, because that's more about you and your community than us, although it's for us. And the 4th one is be here tomorrow. We do this every single weekday morning. It's live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube at 5:50 a.m. Central Time. And then, of course, pre-record or re-recorded replays via videos and audio and things like that. So however you get us, let us know how you got us so we know how to prepare for you better there. And yes, sometimes I forget that it's audio and video, and I do weird things like pucker up on video that makes no sense to people on the audio. I apologize. Thank you so much for being on with us today. We're going to do it tomorrow. Pretty sure we're going to do it tomorrow. So be with us tomorrow for more of the news. Get your day started with things you might not have heard.